Hello all. So today we will be focusing on the middle colonies. The middle colonies are, just below the northern colonies. So let us get started. So right here we see 3 of our 4 middle colonies highlighted on our map. So New York, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. We're also going to be learning about New Jersey, but this is just where they are on the map. And right now I just want you to take a second and think, is there anything that you might already know about the middle colonies? Or maybe you can make a prediction about what the middle colonies may have. Maybe they'll be similar to the northern colonies. Maybe they'll be different. Just take a minute and think about that right before we go. So now we're going to take a second and watch this video about the start of the middle colonies.
Hey, it's Lindsay. New York and Philadelphia are huge United States cities, but that wasn't always the case. What was life like in those places before they became happening towns? I am going to tell you. Get pumped, because today we're talking about the middle colonies. That's New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Let's spin back to 1609, when explorer Henry Hudson and his long beard were hired by the Dutch to find a trade route to Asia. But instead, he found an area that is now New York City, before it was New York City. The Dutch didn't mind. In fact, they liked the area so much that in 1626, they purchased Manhattan Island from the local Native Americans. In 1638, Swedish explorers founded a colony on the Delaware River called New Sweden. Not a very creative name, but it got the job done. Eventually, the Dutch took control of New Sweden and claimed the whole area until they gave it to England in 1664. King of England and stylish dresser Charles II gave the colonies to other people to run because he didn't want to do it himself. Establishing colonies is a lot of work and not cheap. The area that included Manhattan went to the king's equally stylish brother, James, the Duke of York, who named the region New York. Again, not creative, but it has a nice ring. The lands west of the Delaware River went to Quaker William Penn, who called the region Pennsylvania, which means Penn's Woods. Eventually, part of Pennsylvania broke off and became Delaware Colony. Don't worry, it's a perfectly good colony on its own. At first, New Jersey was divided into 2 halves so the king could give it to more people. He had a lot of friends to please. But eventually, East and West New Jersey became one colony. Together at last. So why did everyone want a piece of the middle colonies? They were great for farming. Fertile soil, plenty of water, and a long growing season made the region perfect for growing nummy vegetables and raising livestock. Plus, these rivers made it easy for farmers to sell and ship their crops by boat, which helped grow New York and Philadelphia. Look at them grow. In the middle colonies, most farmers worked their own land. Slavery was less common here than in southern colonies like Virginia, the Carolinas, and Georgia. However, enslaved workers were still a source of labor in large cities like New York City. Not a farmer? No problem. Blacksmiths, tailors, wheelwrights, coopers, shoemakers, printers, and shipbuilders could all find work here. What a fascinating peek at the middle colonies. What else do you want to know about American history? Let's explore next time. See you around.
Alright, so now we're going to keep going on our exploration of the middle colonies. So we have our 4 main middle colonies: New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. So right now, you need to pay attention to the 2 words on your notes and highlight the correct words. So right now, go to your canvas, open up the middle colonies note sheet, and you will see on there, on each of the lines, there will be 2 words bolded. And between those 2 words, you'll see which one you need to highlight on your note sheet, because that word will be highlighted on the slideshow. So for the first 2 spaces, I'll let you know which words you need to be highlighting, but then after that, you should be able to figure it out. So first, we're in New York. So New York was founded in 1626. So that should be the number you're highlighting on your first line of your note sheet, by a Dutch man named Peter Minuit. He bought the land from Native Americans for just $24. Can you imagine buying a whole bunch of land for only $24? That is just really crazy. He named the land New Amsterdam after the capital of the Netherlands. And New Amsterdam is now located where New York City is today. So at this point, the Dutch had set up trading posts near the Hudson River. They traded tools and supplies to the Native Americans. The Native Americans in turn gave them animal furs, and the Dutch also had trading posts to trade with people in Europe. Over time, more and more colonists came from all over Europe, and they then settled in New Amsterdam, or New York. Eventually, there was more British settlers than the Dutch settlers in this New Amsterdam area, but England then took over the area for itself in 1644. So, on that first line of your note sheet, you should have highlighted 1626 and Peter Minuit, not Peter Minute. And then in number 2, you should have highlighted the word bought. So now we're going to keep going. So our second colony we're going to talk about is New Jersey. So the Dutch founded New Jersey in the early 1600s. The Dutch called it New Netherland. So similar to how the Dutch in New York called it New Amsterdam, the Dutch in this area of New Jersey began their first name with New Netherland. But not after it was founded, the British took over as well. And the British changed the name of the Dutch colony to New Jersey in 1664. There were 2 big rivers on both sides of New Jersey, so most people do not think New Jersey was an important farming area. However, New Jersey was a breadbasket because it grew so much wheat. So moving on, we have British leaders of New Jersey tried to bring in more settlers of the area, and they gave freedom, religious freedom, and land to anyone who came. And that's a very big thing, because religious freedom was one of the biggest reasons people were coming to the Americas, and they were promised to have religious freedom and land if they came to New Jersey. But there was a catch. The settlers would have to pay a tax every year for living in the colony. The British had trouble getting people to pay their taxes, so eventually the British sold the colony to the Quakers. And we're going to learn more about the Quakers in our next colony, but the Quakers split up New Jersey into East Jersey and West Jersey in 1673, but the colony didn't stay that way for very long, and in 1702, East Jersey and West Jersey joined back together to form one colony. So now we're going to move on to Pennsylvania. So this is the time where you put on your thinking cap and think, have you ever heard of Quaker oats? You know that oatmeal that you can sometimes see at the store, and there's a man on it with white curly hair and rosy cheeks and a wide black hat? Well, that man that you might see on those oatmeal boxes looks just like our man, William Penn, who actually founded the Pennsylvania colony. He was a Quaker. Quakers are Christians who connect with God on their own. They didn't believe that they needed a priest or a preacher to talk about God. They had their individual journeys or individual walks with God. And the Quakers always tried to do the right thing. But here we see Mr. Penn. He set up a government that gave people freedom to worship the way that they wanted. And that was really something that immigrants of England and the Netherlands and Germany and Scotland were really enticed, or they really wanted to come to Pennsylvania because of that. The freedom of this colony helped the settlers start good relationships with the Native Americans as well. So we see that the land in Pennsylvania was actually very fertile. So it was easy for people to live there to grow crops, which then helped them be able to trade with other people surrounding the areas. And farmers in Pennsylvania and Delaware were able to sell their bread and other grains to settlers in other colonies. They also sold their bread to, they were also able to sell their bread to Pennsylvanians and other Pennsylvanians and traded with other faraway countries through the city. So now we're going to move on to Delaware. So Delaware was founded in the year of 1631. Right after they arrived to the New World, many of the first settlers were killed by some Native Americans. A few years later, Swedish traders set up a trading post in Delaware, and the Dutch eventually came back and pushed the Swedish out. The Dutch in Delaware also built forts in the 1650s. However, these forts were not strong enough to stop the British, and the British actually took the land in 1664. British settlers from Pennsylvania and from Maryland argued over the land of Delaware. Pennsylvania wanted the land because it had a seaport, and seaports were good for trading. Maryland wanted the land because it had a very long coastline. But because of that, the settlers that were actually living in Delaware started their own government. And the government that Delaware started was very strong and united. And it was actually the first American colony to become a state during the American Revolution. So now at this part, we're going to talk about the land and the climate of all of the colonies around this area. So it was made of lowland areas, and because of that, they had a mild climate with fertile soil, and this land was really good for growing fruits, vegetables, and wheat. But there were also some rocky areas like there were in the northern colonies. The settlers here mostly hunted and fished and traded with others. The climate in the middle colonies was not as warm as the southern colonies, but it also wasn't as cool as the northern colonies. So we see that the water systems that the colonists of the middle colonies had helped send goods all over the world. The harbors in Philadelphia and New York became extremely important trading posts, and the rivers made the middle colonies become an important area for commerce and to exchange goods. The settlers of the middle colonies also spent a lot of time trading with the Native Americans, and they traded things like iron tools and weapons. The relationships the colonists had with the Native Americans was helpful to both sides. So the Native Americans were able to get things that they need, and the colonists were also able to get the things that they needed. So the middle colonies really had a lot of good things going for them, with a very good climate and a good area to grow food and things like that. So now I want you all to create a blog post as a colonist in the middle colonies. So on your note sheet, you'll see a little area that you're going to be able to put your blog post in. And I want you to pick 3 of these questions here to post on this slide to answer your question. And you can also use your notes on your note sheet from the slides that we just went through on to help you answer the post. So the 5 questions are: why did you come to the middle colonies, and what were you hoping to find? What was the environment like? So think about the geography and the climate. What types of jobs might you be working in the middle colonies? Living in the middle colonies, what might your religion be? What are your religious beliefs? And what is the government like in the middle colonies? So I want you to pick 3 of those 5 questions to answer, and it should be written in paragraph form. And I want you to be sure to add a title and a date. Right here, this is an example of a blog post written on April 12th of 1627, life in Pennsylvania. Ever since we moved to Pennsylvania from Germany, everything is so different. The weather isn't too warm or too hot. It's the perfect temperature, most of the time. My family works as farmers now, and we grow vegetables to trade with other countries and cities. When we came here, we were looking for religious freedom, and we found it. William Penn created a government where we could worship however and whoever we want. Life isn't easy, but Pennsylvania is not bad. Updates to come. So I want your blog post to look a little similar to that. I don't want it to be exactly the same. I want you to add some different details, but I just want you to talk about how the Middle Colonies helped America become the superpower that it is today, and also use some of the details that we were able to learn about in this PowerPoint to add to your blog post. So feel free to use your notes or use this video or watch the Middle Colonies video that we watched a little bit ago again if you need to. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed learning about the Middle Colonies.